Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. Before we begin with today's discussion, there is an announcement regarding the DNS answer writing program. Since yesterday there was no newspaper published, so we didn't have DNS yesterday, and the question that is posted every Thursday has been posted today evening. This question that you have to answer in 250 words has been taken from the DNS of 16th August 2022. So if you face any problem answering this question, you might like to go and revise the concerned content from the corresponding DNS. To increase your learning from DNS, you must attempt questions so that you understand that you're not just listening, you're also absorbing, and you also are developing the skill to reproduce it in the form of answer when you have been asked a question regarding that. So please do attempt the question and get it evaluated from the faculties at RAU'S IAS. This article is from page number 5 of today's newspaper. The article is based on the contribution of Mary Roy in the female rights movement in India. She fought 4-decade-long legal battle against her brother to claim equal rights over her father's property after his death. After a long legal battle, finally the Supreme Court in her case in 1986 gave a judgment giving her the equal right over her father's property. Prior to that judgment of Supreme Court in 1986, right of a Christian woman in that region was governed by Travancore-Kochi Christian Succession Act. Mary Roy, she was a Syrian Christian. And as per this Succession Act of 1916, a daughter inherited only a quarter of the son's share, or rupees 5,000, whichever is less. This biased legal stand for access of ancestral property for female was corrected by the Supreme Court, and later the judgment became the lighthouse for female rights in India. What began as the land rights today has resulted in Sabrimala judgment, the triple talaq judgment. That is why Mary Roy is regarded too much in the female rights movement in India. But here we will base our discussion on the land rights for females. According to Landesa, this is an NGO and also a founding partner in the Stand for Her Land campaign. This campaign has worked very hard to provide equal access to ancestral property to females. They have made an observation that for men and women alike, land is the foundation for security, for shelter, for livelihood. It supports women's dignity and creates a pathway to empowerment and economic opportunity. For women, land truly is a gateway towards improvement of basic rights, well-being, without which the well-being of all women will be hampered. Insecure land rights actually creates obstacle for women in engaging in farming, in other agricultural activities, also in running any home-based enterprise, and for that matter in accessing safe and decent housing. According to UN Women Rights Office, women land rights are key determinant to women's empowerment more so in rural areas and have profound implication on women's ability to enjoy and practice civil and political rights, social and economic rights, as well as to escape poverty and social exclusion. Hernando de Soto, an eminent economist, has pointed out in the book The Mystery of Capital that legal ownership of land can make all the difference between poverty and the ability to escape it. These observations very beautifully highlights the importance of land ownership by both men and women. But we are having the discussion in the context of land ownership by women. Unfortunately, in case of India, we do not have gendered data on the land or other immovable assets possession. The Agricultural Survey does not take such data. Also, the National Family Health Survey does not take engendered data, meaning it does not segregate the assets in the name of female and the assets in the name of male. But however, National Family Health Survey 5 has given a data that 43% of women respondents reported owning a house or a land alone or jointly. But we are interested in the data of women owning a house or a land alone, and that data is not available directly from the government sources. So we have to rely on other data by NGOs. One such data comes from ICRISAT. It stands for International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics. It's an international organization which conducts agricultural research for rural development. It collected the data between 2009 and 14, and based on this data, women constituted only 14% of all landowners. And together, women owns only 11% of the land in India. The average land holding of women owners is 1.24 hectare, which is considerably lesser than the average land holding of 1.66 hectare by men owners. What is more crucial to understand is this: most of the land owning women, they have acquired land through their marital families, for the reason that they might have become widows and not as daughters, claiming the right over the assets of parents after their death. So land holding to women has come as a result of death of husband, and not because of strong inheritance laws or their proper implementation. There are very few women who are co-owners in joint family property. Also, the owners of land in case of women, they were aged 50 or above. There also has been considerable variance in the land ownership from state to state. For example, the female landowners were 32% in Telangana, but only 6% in Odisha. Although the data is pretty old, but they have not given the data in terms of number, but as percentage. So these data would be more or less same even in current times. This data of 14% you must remember for your exam, because this is also corroborated by other source. For example, a research paper of University of Manchester in 2020 also came up with a figure of 16%. So roughly 14 to 16% can be taken as a number for female land ownership in India. Women in India, they make up 33% of cultivators and 47% of agricultural laborers. But according to the agricultural census of 2015-16, only 11.72% of total operated area in the country were operated by females. The corresponding average data for Asia, collected of course from other sources, is this: 42% of agricultural laborers are female, but only 11% are landholders. This data considerably gets improved if we look in the Latin American region. There, women comprise only 20% of agricultural labor and 18% of landowners. I'll give you a slightly different but a related data. Almost one third of rural households are estimated to be headed by a woman. But for them to exercise any authority, legal authority or social authority, the land that they are using for cultivation must be registered in their name. Only then the social structure, families being headed by women, will work. And it will help in a lot other ways that we will talk about in a moment. For example, obtaining credit, making agriculture more efficient, and in many other ways. So the natural question to be asked is, why land ownership in India is so less when female are contributing almost equally, if not more, in terms of participation in agriculture? I'll give you a quick background concerning the inheritance laws in India. In case of a Hindu undivided family, the inheritance law was the customary Hindu laws. They were codified after independence by the parliament through Hindu Succession Act 1956. But the act has two major lacuna. The inheritance of agricultural land, this was to be decided as per the land reform laws. And the land reform laws were not gender equal. Additionally, the daughters of the family, they were excluded from the co-parcenary rights. I'll quickly tell you what co-parcenary rights mean. Suppose A is the man, and A gave birth to B and C, and B gave birth to D and E, and D gave birth to F. Now, if the property of A still exists, then F can have a claim on it. F will have co-parcenary rights. Who has co-parcenary rights? 3 generations. Males of 3 generations traditionally were considered as having co-parcenary rights. So if B wants, B can lay a claim on the property of A. B can initiate division of the property. Although the property will be divided among all the co-parcener, and B will just have the equal right, but B can initiate the process. Similarly, D can also do it, C can also do it, E can also do it, F can also do it. But if F gave birth to G, G cannot do it because G will be in the fourth generation. But all these rights were only to males, and daughters were excluded from it. So, Hindu Succession Amendment Act of 2005 gave the co-parcenary rights to females. So the matters were settled, and now the daughters had equal rights as sons in the property of their father. But then the technicality and confusion prevailed. There were contradictory judgments of Supreme Court that the co-parcenary rights will be enforced after this amendment or before this amendment in retrospect. There was a slight confusion, and the matter now has been settled by the Supreme Court in its judgment of 2020, where it made very clear that a Hindu woman's right to be a joint heir in the ancestral property is by birth and does not depend on whether her father was alive or not when the law was enacted in 2005. There were some judgments previously given by Supreme Court itself which said that if father was alive on the day of enforcement, only then the daughters will have the right to ancestral property. Otherwise, they may not have, and there was some confusion like that. But now the settled stand of Indian legal system is this. Daughters have the same rights to inherit their father's property as the son. A daughter's right to inherit from her father will not change whether she is married or unmarried or divorced or widowed. The marital status does not matter. This right to lay claim on the ancestral property is given to a daughter by the virtue of her birth. The mother's right to inherit from her son will also not be changed, depending upon whether she is widowed or divorced or married. Daughters can also lay claim to inherit their mother's property just like sons. And the right of a widow to acquire property are the same as the right of married women. So the inheritance law in a Hindu undivided family has been made such that males and females, the daughters and sons, they have equal rights. It also has strengthened the position of single mother. But then what's the issue? On ground, we don't see this to be the case. The spirit of law is not reflected in the ground reality. The thing is, even today, all the stakeholders are reluctant to implement this. Even the females are reluctant to lay claim on the right. The fathers are concerned about losing control of their land if it is transferred to their married daughters. And the daughters are afraid that claiming their inheritance would sever the family ties. They're also morally burdened by the things that father has done already, for instance, giving hefty dowry in their marriage. And the policymakers, the administrators, government, they are concerned about land fragmentation. So despite amendment in the law, amendment in the attitude has not happened. But it is quintessential that women must have equal land rights. Because when women have secured land rights, they have higher economic gains. For example, the Stand for Her Land campaign has given certain data. In Tanzania, women with strong land rights were 3 times more likely to work off farm and to earn 3.8 times more. This has increased women's use of credit and control over the crops produced on the land. When women have secured land rights, women empowerment increases because it increases economic security. And when the economic security is ensured, women have greater control over household decisions. Again, Stand for Her Land campaign has given us some data that in Nepal, 37% of women who own land had the final say on the household decisions, compared to only 20% of women who did not own any land. When women have secured land rights, land use becomes more efficient. The agricultural investment and production increases. From the same source, we have more data. For instance, in Rwanda, women with formalized land rights were 19% more likely to engage in soil conservation compared to 10% among men. When women have secured access to land, nutrition outcomes improve. Going back to the same source, we have some more data. For instance, in Ethiopia, an increase in land allocated to women decreased household food insecurity by 36%. There have been several studies done in African and Asian nations that shows that increase in female landholding are associated with increase in household food expenditure and child educational attainment. It has been proven beyond doubt that women's land rights are fundamental to rural development outcomes, as women's ownership and control over land can affect what households produce and how the proceeds from agricultural production are allocated within the family. The land holding by women prepares the family for the worst case scenario. The family, after the males are disappearing in the conflict region, has security only because of land holdings in the name of women. In conflicts and post conflict situations, the number of women headed households often increases sharply as men are either being killed or they have gone missing. So, without their husbands, brothers, or fathers, in whose name the land and property titles are traditionally held, they find themselves difficult to access their homes and fields. Sometimes they are simply denied by the male family members, the formal in laws, for suppose, or maybe in some cases the neighbors. So, without the security of a home or income, women and their family fall into poverty traps. They struggle for their livelihood, and then there is no education or healthcare, denial of their civic, social, political rights. So, simply from future security perspective, certain resources, immovable resources, houses, lands, they must be registered in the name of women. Because of these reasons, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, it contains certain targets where women's land and property rights that is tracked. It's considered important for ending poverty, for achieving food security, and of course for ensuring gender equality. The voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure. Tenure here refers to the land ownership. It's a globally agreed international instrument for responsible land governance. This also prioritizes strengthening of women's land rights. The Beijing Platform for Action. This is also a platform for women empowerment, women security, women safety. This also affirmed that women's right to inheritance and ownership of land and property should be recognized. The Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. This has underscored this fact, referring to rural women's right to equal treatment in land and agrarian reform process. UN Women also advocates for women's land and property rights. This is the core of its strategy to enhance women's economic security and rights to reduce feminized poverty. So, what could be the strategy to strengthen the women's land rights? The strategies you can categorize into three categories. Certain reform measures are required to guarantee inheritance right to females, which has already been done in India. But that needs to be understood by females. So, a lot of awareness program, hand holding, some technical help that has to be given to women. And then support is needed legally, socially, politically in helping women to claim those rights. There have been many countries globally that has taken a policy decision to give tax rebate for women who registered a land title. India also have the provision of lower fee for registration in case of joint ownership where women are included. Registration of marriage and divorce, it is crucial, very important in securing women's land rights. Compulsory registration of marriages authorizes women to claim for the property and investments of their husbands on widowhood. There are many organizations like Swadhina which promotes marriage registration camps at village level. This helps to guarantee women's equal rights to husbands' land and property. This we have been talking about, Stand for Her Land. This is the campaign to narrow the gap between the law and the ground reality. USAID also has been working in this area and it has taken many measures across the world. For instance, in Tanzania, USAID has helped in women's land certification. They have given some number on their website that women's land certification jumped from almost zero to 49.4% in the villages. In the villages where USAID's mobile application to secure tenure, this was deployed. Basically helps in the registration process. You can also use this as an example for technology in the aid of women empowerment. USAID also has been working in Tajikistan on the project Feed the Future. Feed the Future project is supporting land policy reforms and legal aid clinics that focuses on strengthening women's property rights, on restructuring the farmlands. They are helping to redefine the land use rights. They essentially have established a connection between the land use rights given to females and the agricultural productivity. Similarly, USAID also has been supporting the judicial and policy reforms in many countries vis-a-vis the women's property rights. The NGO Swadhina, this also has been promoting the functional education. They have been teaching the rural women to sign their names. It also has promoted the grassroots level women's group. They are helping women get organized into the group at village level. And the members of these women groups, they are provided with socio-legal leadership training. And then these women are encouraged to apply for joint ownership of common land. There is an organization called as Ekal Nari Shakti Sangathan. It's a network of single women that includes women who were never married or abandoned or divorced or separated or widowed. They have been working since 2000s and they demanded separate official registration, separate ration cards, and 2 acres of surplus government land on a 30-year lease basis from the state government. You see, this is in recognition to the importance of land ownership or the operational right on the land. In Himachal Pradesh, the first 2 demands were accepted, and such women were also given the pension rights. This is about claiming the rights. When the rights are given, you also have to claim it. Claiming the right is actually the bottleneck in implementation of the laws, of the Supreme Court judgments giving the equal inheritance right. And the biggest difficulty is at the community level. It doesn't come from the institutions, but the community itself. So the solution must also come from the community level. There's a project being run in Kenya where the respected tribal elders, they participate to help the widows or the females with HIV or AIDS who have been evicted. They are helping these women to regain control over land and the family property, because ownership of land and other immovable property is crucial for realizing and enjoying other civic, social, and political rights. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently, on the occasion of 15th August, has said that we must have respect for women. He said that it is an important pillar for India's growth. You know how practically this will be implemented? Respect and dignity, it is linked with empowerment, and empowerment comes from property ownership. For women empowerment to be substantive, just job opportunities will not do. Women must have the ownership right. There is a news article on page number 11. Can civil servants express their views on law and on governance? You must have been aware of this fact that IAS officer Smita Sabharwal, you must have heard about her. She came to the limelight because of her initiative called as Fund Your City. She also became the youngest IAS officer to be serving as secretary in any chief minister's office. Presently, she is a secretary in the CMO of Telangana. So the issue is that Smita Sabharwal has expressed her personal opinion. She has gone to the Twitter by her personal account to express discontentment with the Gujarat government's decision to release the 11 convicts of Bilkis Bano case. And this has triggered a debate in the political and bureaucratic circles regarding expression by a civil servant against the decision of government while in duty. So the issue in hand essentially is this: whether such expressions by a civil servant against the government's decision is covered under Article 19(1)(a) or restricted by the Central Civil Services Conduct Rules of 1964 as ground of reasonable restriction under Article 19(2). Different opinions have been expressed on the tweet by Smita Sabharwal against the decision of remission in the backdrop of Central Civil Services Conduct Rules of 1964. Let's quickly have a look at the rule number 9 of Central Civil Services Conduct Rules. It says that no government servant shall, in any radio broadcast, you can understand how archaic it is. In any radio broadcast, any telecast through any electronic media, or in any document published in his own name, or anonymously, pseudonymously, or in the name of any other person, or in any communication to the press, or in any public utterance, make any statement of fact or opinion which has the effect of an adverse criticism of any current or recent policy or actions of the central government or a state government. There is no settled opinion in law either by the notification of the Government of India or any judgment of any tribunal or the Supreme Court that settles the matter whether the civil servants can air their personal opinion in the issue of national importance through the social media or not. There are different arguments in the favor. For instance, it is said that in democracy, the right to criticize government is a fundamental right, guaranteed by the Constitution, and even bureaucrats are Indian citizens. This opinion has been highlighted in the Lipika Paul versus the State of Tripura judgment. In this judgment, the Tripura High Court has held that as a government servant, the petitioner is not devoid of a right to free speech, a fundamental right which can be curtailed only by a valid law. The petitioner was entitled to hold her own beliefs and express them in the manner she desired, subject to not crossing the borders laid down in the conduct rules. If you read the conduct rules again, it says that the bureaucrats should not be communicating anything which has the effect of an adverse criticism. Not allowing the bureaucrats to express their opinion actually subverts the rule of law. It has been generally argued that decision to release prisoners guilty of gang rape and murder not only subverts the spirit of constitution and rule of law, but goes against the judicial verdicts. And in such exceptional circumstances, the bureaucrat had expressed the opinion because it is the duty of the civil servant to uphold the spirit of the constitutional principles and hence uphold the principle of rule of law. Also, Rule 9 of Central Civil Services Conduct Rules is not only stringent but also very vaguely worded, releasing criminals who had committed heinous crimes prematurely without application of mind, as has been suggested by the Supreme Court, cannot be termed as a policy of the executive. And the Rule 9 says that the communication should not have the effect of an adverse criticism of policy or the actions of central government or a state government. See, when the time changes, for the governance to become more efficient, there has to be adaptation to the time. Social media has become the reality of our times. Prohibition on use of social media, even by the bureaucrat to express his or her opinion, is to devoid them of their fundamental rights of freedom of speech and expression. Not only that, the mode of governance should be upgraded to bring efficiency in the system. So the process of governance cannot be bereft of use of social media. And when social media can be used for the general purpose of governance, it can also be used to express the personal opinion. Mind you, Smita Sabharwal did not use the official Twitter handle. She used her personal account to express her personal opinion. But at the same time, many arguments are there against it. For instance, Rule 9 of the Central Civil Services Conduct Rules prohibits any expression of opinion against the central government or the state government. Now, the action clearly is of the Gujarat state government. And in case of crimes whose investigation has been done by CBI, the state government, in taking such decision of remission, has to mandatorily consult the central government. It has not been made public or very clear yet whether the Gujarat state government consulted the central government in taking the decision of remission or not. But still, even if the central government was not contacted, still the conduct rules bar criticism of any state government. It may not be a clear policy, but definitely it was a clear executive action. And Rule 9 talks both of policy and action. It is also suggested that instead of airing personal opinion, the bureaucrats can approach the association. There is IAS Officer Association of India. If any bureaucrat feel very strongly about something, then such officers can approach the association rather than expressing personal opinion on social media platforms. That way, the opinion can be institutionalized and it will also carry more weight. The whole purpose of Central Civil Services Conduct Rules is to instill discipline among the officers for overall functioning of the government and such personal opinion that goes against the policy or action of government that instill indiscipline. There are other institutional measures of giving dissent notes. If a particular bureaucrat or a civil servant is directly involved in policy or action of the government. But then this is limited only if a bureaucrat is directly involved. It is also suggested that criticism does not help unless you are in the position to make changes. It has been pointed out by some that being an officer serving under the Telangana government, Ms. Sabharwal has no authority to express her opinion on the decision of the Gujarat government, as she is not the stakeholder there in the decision-making process. These are some of the arguments in favor and against the issue of civil servants airing their opinion on social media platform. Now, there is no settled stand of the government or judiciary on this. Although we have a judgment from the High Court of Tripura, but the Supreme Court has taken no position on this. So for now, you just have to be aware of different opinions, and if the matter comes to the Supreme Court, the stand taken by the apex court, that must become your stand on the issue. This is the data point article from page number 11. It gives some statistics concerning the political funding to some select national and regional parties. The Association of Democratic Reform has done some analysis of the income tax return of these parties. And that analysis shows that 36% of the sources of funding remains anonymous. You would know that currently parties are not required to reveal the names of individuals or organizations that make donations of rupees 20,000 or less. And they are not required to reveal the name at all under the electoral bonds. But as ADR report highlights that these parties have been brought under the RTI Act back in 2013, but still they are not transparent at all with regard to sharing information about the source of funding. So what we are going to do here is to have a general discussion on political funding.
According to the Association for Democratic Reform report, Association for Democratic Reform ADR is an NGO that works in the field of political and electoral reform. According to its report, only around 3.4% of total registered unrecognized political party put the contribution report, the detail of their funding, donation, in public domain. In short, only around 3.4% of total registered unrecognized political party put political donation information in public domain. Registered party is one which is registered with Election Commission. Registered unrecognized political party are those who are registered with Election Commission but maybe they are newly registered or they have not secured enough percentage of votes in assembly election to be declared as a state party, or those registered parties who have never contested any election. The reason for doubling of their number in last 10 years is the political economy. You must know that political parties are completely exempted from paying income tax if they fulfill two conditions. One, they file income tax return, and two, if they submit details of donations which are above rupees 20,000 to the Election Commission of India. But there are unrecognized political parties who say that they have not received any donation more than rupees 20,000. And such political party continue to enjoy income tax exemption, apart from not requiring to give details of donations. This is a huge legal problem and a huge problem for our democracy, because through such political parties, black money can be laundered. This is more of a concern in the context of some recent measures taken by Government of India. For example, you would be aware that in March 2018, FCRA Act was amended to allow foreign companies to fund political parties in India. So now money can come even from abroad. The reports of such donations are not being submitted to Election Commission of India, are not there in public domain. They are getting the tax benefit, and there is a huge possibility of black money getting laundered in India. According to previous reports of ADR, 69% of income of political parties are from unknown sources. This must be seen in the context that no political party has complied with RTI Act on voluntary basis. Law Commission in its 255th report has observed that opacity in political funding results in lobbying and capture of government by big donors, leading to crony capitalism. If political funding is not proper, if black money is coming in form of political donations, then there will be commercialization of election, leading to election engineering, huge investment in advertisements, high distribution of freebies, making more space for criminals in politics. Because money will dictate terms. The candidate giving more money will have higher chance of getting seats. There will be more corruption, more nexus among criminals, corporates, politicians. There will be no free and fair election. So the quality of legislature will decrease and the quality of legislative work will also decrease. Good governance, ethical governance, all will become just an illusion. Government will lose public trust. Social capital will erode. Cooperation with public will decrease. And in that case, you cannot have good governance. People will get disenchanted from politics. Youth will be chased away from politics. You will not participate in the process of governance. You will not use accountability and transparency tools like RTI. You will not involve yourself in social audits. You will not use citizen charters. All these will further increase criminalization of politics. Do you know 43% of sitting MPs have criminal charges? This number was 34% in 2014. Political funding actually has huge consequence in working of a democracy. So what's the solution? One of the solutions suggested by many and also by former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi is to establish National Electoral Fund, where all the donors, individuals, corporates, foreign companies, whosoever, all will contribute at one place. And then the funds will be allocated to political parties in proportion of their votes that they got last time. The electoral bond that government ostensibly brought to make the political funding more transparent is marred with controversy. It has made the entire process of funding more opaque. ADR has suggested that there has to be regulation of registration of political parties. Election Commission of India delisted 255 political parties in 2016 because they were not politically active. Election Commission must be more active to identify parties which are not politically active and proactively deregister them. You may be surprised to know that according to April 2018 notification of Election Commission of India, 97% of registered political parties are unrecognized. And hundreds of political parties get registered just months before election. This clearly shows the intention of political parties getting registered with Election Commission of India. So, Election Commission of India must have a serious look into the matter.
There is a news article on page number 1, IMF to extend $2.9 billion to Sri Lanka. IMF is getting into an agreement with Sri Lanka to help the crisis-hit nation. This loan extended by IMF of $2.9 billion to Sri Lanka will be under the arrangement called as Extended Fund Facility. For the purpose of prelims exam, we'll just quickly go through the pointers regarding Extended Fund Facility. See, when a country faces serious medium-term balance of payment problem because of the structural weakness that requires time to address, then the IMF can assist through Extended Fund Facility. Although it may be the case that even because of slow growth and not necessarily because of balance of payment problem, still the IMF can assist a country within the framework of Extended Fund Facility because there is a structural weakness in the economy. IMF has other kind of arrangement for financial help to the nation. For example, one such arrangement is called as the standby arrangement. In standby arrangement, the engagement of IMF with a particular nation is for short term. The repayment of loan by the nation is also within a smaller period of time. But compared to this kind of assistance, under Extended Fund Facility, the engagement of IMF with a nation is for longer period. Because as you understand, this help is coming from IMF because the nation is having structural weakness. And to overcome structural weakness, any nation will require some considerable period of time. So they have to take structural reform. And to have structural reform or structural adjustments, time is given to the nation. So IMF assistance is given for a period of around 4 years. And whatever assistance comes in the time of 4 years, it has to be repaid back in a time duration of between 4 to 10 years. In standby arrangement, the repayment of loan has to be given within 5 years. As is the practice by IMF in any kind of facility that IMF provides that is concerned with balance of payment problem. There's a strong focus on structural adjustment in the economy. Any country, if it is taking assistance under extended fund facility, it commits to undertake policies to overcome economic and structural problems. The particular adjustment that a nation has to take that is negotiated between the nation and the officials of IMF. But generally, it pertains to the condition of controlling inflation, fiscal deficit, control on subsidy, and other macroeconomic stability parameters like import cover and other such things. IMF also assists in formulating policies and programs for the nation, and the IMF Executive Board regularly assess the program performance, and they can also suggest improvement or adjustment to adapt to economic developments. As is the case with all other IMF lending, the size of borrowing under extended fund facility is guided by countries' financial need and their inherent capacity to repay, and the past track record and the present dues with the IMF. In case of extended fund facility, generally it is 145% of countries' IMF quota. This is the annual limit, and the cumulative limit throughout the period of time is 435% of its IMF quota.